Okay, good morning, everybody. So we're on Chaf Amud Aleph, and the art scroll. And the art scroll is 28.2. 28.2, Tanarabanan. So we've been having a large focus regarding mats. You know, what kind of mats are kosher for schach? What kind of mats are not kosher for schach? If the mat is made for lying down, then I saw a discussion about the dimensions, Mr. Haber. The Gemara, I saw, that one of the opinions is a mat that's what I recall, a size that a person will lie down on. Like a size for a person to lie down around that size, that's called a small mat. Like a personal mat. Something to that extent. I have to look up exactly the detail, but I saw the Gemara is not discussing it here. Good morning, Dr. Navid.
Go ahead.
What the size of the mat? What the size of the mat that we're talking about? What's called a small mat, right? So I saw somewhere that it's brought down that maybe the size that one person could lay down, that is the type of size of a mat that we are. If you want to know what's called a small mat, if we look at the Shulchan Aruch, Taf Reish Lamed Aleph. Take out the Shulchan Aruch. Taf Reish Lamed Aleph, Sif Yud. So, no, Taf Reish Gimel. No, here it is. So let's see where exactly this. Good morning, Adam. Yeah, let's see. In the back over here, they have something called, in the back of the Masifta of the Gemara, they have something that's called Aliba de Hilchata, according to the law. Let's see if they should point out this point. Marcella, yeah. So it says Marcella Katana. What's called a small mat. It only has the size for a person to sleep on. So they call on the bottom Tuf Kuf Lamed Ches. Tuf Kuf Lamed Ches is the Mishnah Berurah. The Chafetz Chaim in Simin Tuf Reish Chaf Tes, Stif Cotton Tes. He brings down the size that a person could sleep on. So let's take a look at the quote of the Mishnah Berurah. Tov Reish Chav Tes, Sif Cotton 15. So let's take a look. $15. And then he brings down in the name of the Bikuri Yaakov that the mat is the size of the height of a person and a drop more than that. But more than that will be called a large mat. So the size of a mat is that, the size of a person's body. What's the average person? Close to 6 feet, maybe a drop more than the size of a body of a person. That answers, Mr. Haber, your question. It's interesting that this law was, you needed the Chafetz Chaim to tell us, he quotes different opinions. It's not discussed in the Gemara, right? Right, but this is identifying it because even the Shulchan Aruch himself, he says if it's a small mat, and the Shulchan Aruch does not identify what's called a small mat. Comes the Chafetz Chaim, he says, what's called a small mat? the size that you could lay down on. And then he quote on the bottom, the Chafetz Chaim goes further. That's a quote from the Ran, one of the Rishonim. And then he explains that's the height of a person a little more, but if it's more than that, more than 6 feet, let's say, let's say if the height of a person is 6 feet, so 6'1", 6'2", more than anything that's more considerably more than the size of a person, considered a large mat. Okay, so that answers your question. Okay, getting back to our Gemara, we welcome Hannah, we said before. Here we're talking now, the Gemara opens up with a machselet on 28.2. 28.2, the top of the page in the article. Machselet shel shifa v'shel gemi. That's a mat. That's not. It's not the mat, the reed mat. We've been talking until now, right? The Mishnah had spoke about machselet kanim. Kanim means the material is reed material, R-E-E-D. We are now on 20a. We're now, the Gemara is saying a braita, 20a2, where the material is a softer material. That's this shifa shagemi, like a rubbish type of material. They identify these are plants that belong to the rush family, which is a type of a waterside type of plant. And they are more softer than those made out of reeds. So this braita says, since they're not as hard as reeds, so it says the following: Kidola, even though it's softer material, but if it's a large mat, which is not a personal mat, right? We said a small mat is more of like a personal size mat. A large mat, even from this family, you're allowed to use for Succah. You're allowed to use it for a Sukkah covering because at the end of the day, it's not a smooth. Rashi says, and the point is because since it is large, a large mat. This type of large mat is made for sukkah. It's not made for, it's made for a covering. It's not made for a person to lie down on. You want something for a person to lie down on, you would make it a small mat. But if you make a large mat, so this opinion says, you're allowed to use it for schach. It is not susceptible to contamination. Meaning to say, we said, and we said to the group, Thank you very much. If people lie down on it, if it's designated for people lie down on, so then it says it's susceptible to contamination. And then you can't use it for schach. But since it's a large mat, so he says you could go ahead and use it for schach. No problem. You can use it for schach. However, katana, if it's a small mat, and it has this unique quality that it's not as hard as a reed. So he says, if it's a small mat, ein mesachim bo. If it's small, you can't use this rubbish softer material if it's small. Now he does not make a difference. Now when something is small, and it's this material, now sometimes they braid it, sometimes they weave it. Weaving is will make it a much softer, smoother situation. Braiding it, it still won't be so soft, won't be as smooth because of the braids. And he doesn't make a distinction whether it's braided, whether it's woven. Both cases, this opinion says, if it's small, which is more of a personal mat, he says it's a problem because he says that it's going to be used for a person to lie down on, and then you can't. Being that's the case, you can't use it for schach. So we have a small mat from this rubbish, softer type of material, we say you can't use it for schach. It doesn't make a difference whether it's braided, it's not braided, woven. You can't use it for schach. Comes the next opinion, and now he talks about shel konim v'shel chilat. If the material that it's made from is a reed material, right? Which we've been talking about until today. We've been talking about a hard type of material made out of a mat made out of reeds. Well, chilat is also something similar to, they call it made out of sedge. Sedge is also very similar toughness as a reed. So it says the following. So gedula, if it is braided, then misachrim bo. If this mat is braided, then you could go ahead and use it for schach. Why could you use it for schach if it's braided? Because if it's braided, it's not so smooth because of the braids. It wasn't woven, and also, so you have two things that are negative for sleeping on. Number one, it's hard material. Number two, it is hard material and it's also braided. But if it's aruga, if this mat, let's say the reed mat, even though it's hard material, but if it's woven, it's a little smoother. The weaving process, Mr. Haber, makes the material more smoother, right? And therefore, you're going to go ahead, and if it's smoother, so therefore you might go ahead and use it for a mat. So therefore, we're saying now the reed mat that's woven cannot be used as schach. So now comes Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yossi, Omer Misham Aviv. He says, in the name of his father, Achazu Misachim. He says, you know what? You could use it as schach because reed is a hard material. It's not made for people to lay down on, and therefore you can use it for schach. So here we have a very lenient opinion that it says that the mat, even the small mat, if it's made out of reeds, doesn't make a difference whether it's woven, whether it's braided, even if it's woven, which makes it a little smoother. Since it's made out of reeds, it's made out of hard material. It's not used for lying down, and therefore you could go ahead and use it for schach. So here the issue over here is all about, can you? This opinion is the most lenient opinion and would allow you to use a mat made out of reeds, even though it's small, because people won't use it for laying down. According to this opinion, it's not generally used for laying down because it's hard. It's hard material. People want to lay down on something. You lay down on something which is more comfortable. Okay, Tanan Hasa. We learned in the Mishnah over there. This is a Mishnah in Idiots. Kol hachathalot, all mats. And we're going to have to define, the Gemara is going to explain what mats are we referring to. Kol hachathalot, mitamim tamei. All mats have the ability to contract tuma from a mate. That means if they come in contact with a dead body, they will become tamei. And the commentators explain it's not only if it comes in contact with a dead body, other sources of tuma, if it comes in contact with other things, a dead animal, a dead person, or a nida touches it, or a leper touches it, it's susceptible to contamination. All mats are susceptible to contamination. That's the opinion of Rav Dosa. The Chachamim omrim midras. The Chachamim say that all they're susceptible to the contamination called midras. Now, what does this mean? Morning sun. Midras means something that you light, that's used to lie down on. And we said there's a special novelty that the Torah says, a special chidush, a special stringency, that's something that's designated people use to lie down on. If a nida or a zava, certain types of contaminated people, if they will lie down on this item or sit on this item, if it's designated for sitting or lying down, the item would contract the same, it will become an avatum. The item will become that bed, that chair will become a father of tumah. In general, usually something that is contaminated comes in contact with a second source. The second source, we'll call it the child. There's the dad, it's called the av, the source. Then the child is the product, what comes from the dad, the byproduct of the dad. So generally, if you have, let's say, an animal, a dead animal that wasn't slaughtered, that's called the nevela. And a nevela has the ability to contaminate. As is, it's called it's a nevela. If you slaughter an animal properly, it's not a dead, it's not called a nevela. It's not a tameh. But an animal that was not slaughtered is considered a nevela. And if it touches something, its child, which is the product of its action, is called a rishon l'tumah, becomes a first generation. It's not the dad. It's called the rishon, like the first child. Now, however, what's the difference between the child and the dad? What's the difference between the nevela and the item that became contaminated through the nevela, the product that became as a result of the nevela? The second item that became the nevela is the source, and then there's the child that it touched. The difference is the child is weaker than the dad. How is the child weaker than the dad? The child is limited. The product is limited in who he can contaminate. You hear that, Mr. Abraham? That child was called the Rishon. The first, there's the dad, and then there's the Rishon, the child. The Rishon cannot contaminate a person. It cannot contaminate a utensil. To contaminate a person, to make something, a person contaminated, you need a higher level contamination to contaminate a person. You need the actual source of the contamination to contaminate a person, or even if it's not the actual dad, even not the source, but if it has the status of the source. If it's called an avatuma. Now, what's an example? Example is the bed, the chair that a person would sit on, that would lay down on. The nida, a nida is an avatuma. A lady, during the time that she has a period, she's considered an avatuma. Now, today's day and age, we don't go, good morning. We don't go, we're not dealing with truma. You know, when she's a nida, she can't handle truma, right? She's married to a kohen. If truma now, she can't touch the truma when she's a nida. Today, there's no problem for her to touch the food. It's not truma. You can't contaminate holy items. There's no problem of contaminating a non-holy item. The laws of nida today, the ramifications are regarding going to the mikveh in order to be permitted to the husband. That is the ramifications today of the nida. Now, if the nida would sit on the bed, that bed would have the same level of the nida. she's not called, we don't give it the status of a rishon, like a product of, and therefore will be limited in what it can contaminate. We say that the midras, bedding or the chair, that it's something that's used for a bed or a chair for lying down, has the status of the source itself. So therefore, the nida is an avatuma and can contaminate a person or a utensil. Not only she has the ability, the bed that she sleeps on, the chair that she sleeps on, also has that same ability. That's the big novelty of the thing called midras. This type of contamination, the Torah, for some reason, there's a reason, considers the bedding and the bed and the chair that as the status of the source itself, and therefore it has the ability, it has power. That bed or that chair, if a person would come in contact with that bed or chair, they would become contaminated because they came in contact with status of a dad. We find similarly a person who passes away is called the avi avota tumah, the highest level of tumah, because he also, first of all, they need the ashes of the paraduma if you come in contact with that person. But a person who comes in contact with that dead body, person comes into the room that there's a dead body, they become an avatuma. They become a daddy. They don't have a status of a rishon, of like a first generation. They have the status like the original generation, and therefore, being that they consider an av, they have the ability to contaminate a person or utensil. That is a little bit of the background of the uniqueness of midras. So now the Gemara says,
Rabbi,
yes,
midras holds its tumah for how long?
it should be the same. I would say it has the same contamination, has the same length of time of the nida, which that's what I would say, but I would have to look it up. It should be, there's a pasuk. We'll get out the pasuk in the Chumash. In Sefer Vayikra, in Parshas Tazria, it should be over there, or in Shmini, where it talks about these laws. Let's see. Okay. It's in Mitzorah. Parshas Mitzorah. It says, says any mishkav that the zav is which the same applied to the nidah, person who has certain types of emissions from his body, certain types of not normal, and the certain halachas, what will make him into a zav. So it says that any bed that he lies on, which would be the same thing by nidah. If we take a look by the pasuk by the nidah, it says by nidah, it will become tamei. Anything that she sits on, she lies on, becomes tamei, and anybody who touches that item, that bedding, would become tamei. Now, your question was, how long would that item become tamei for? Right? That was your question. It says. So we would have to really look more into it, because here the pasuk doesn't identify how long the item would become tamei for. The pasuk only focuses on the person who touches that bedding would they would have to go to the mikveh, and they would become tamei for one day. The person who comes in contact with that bed of the nidah, a nidah on the Torah level, nidah is tamei for 7 days. A nidah is tamei. So if someone who touches that bed would be tamei for that day. That's what the pasuk says, but it does not identify here. Here it says it says it will become tamei. Anything that she sits on. Here it doesn't. If we have to look in the Mishnayot to see exactly what the status of that item a little bit more is. Exactly how long does that item have the ability to become, tahar right away, to send to the mikveh? Well, that's something that has to be looked more into.
So in our case, if the mat becomes tamei, okay, someone touches it, it's mitras.
Right. So
Then
the mat becomes
it's only
mitras.
one day, it'll be clear. What's the big deal?
One thing, the person who touches that midras, he'll become tamei for that day. Meaning, if someone touches that bed of the nidah,
Okay.
What happened was that bedding is tamei, right? The bed that
Correct.
the nidah
Is the
touched
of.
it becomes an av, exactly. So as
Right.
long as nothing, meaning as long as nothing was done to the bed, right? As long as the bed was not brought to the mikveh or whatever, wasn't purified, it will remain tamei.
That was my question. Okay,
Right.
it will remain tamei.
That bed remains tamei. It's unless you remove it by going to the mikveh, that remains
Wow.
that remains tamei. The tumah doesn't go off the bed by itself. It's not it's not that it's, just like anybody, just like a nidah. A lady, let's say on a Torah level, when she's a nidah, she's coming for 7 days, but it's not removed, the tumah, until she goes to the mikveh. Meaning it's the same,
Wow.
sometimes you can have if a lady, let's say she's no longer has a period. Let's say she got older. But, good morning, Mr. Silverman. But
Morning, Rabbi.
But she had, the last time she had a period was 10 years ago.
She's
5
still
years
nidah.
ago. But she's still in nidah. If in the last 5 years, from the last time she had a period, and it's 5 years later, she hasn't had a period of 5 years, but she never went to the mikveh since the last time she had a period. It's a problem. She's a nidah. She's still a nidah. Something has to be done.
Right,
to
but what do you
remove
do
the
with a
status of
bed?
contamination. What'd you say?
What do you do with a mattress? What do you do with furniture?
Goes in the mikveh.
A chair.
That's
You
they have to
actually-
go to the mikveh.
Yeah, they dip their
Wow.
beds in the mikveh. They used to dip the bed posts in the mikveh in the times of the Gemara.
So that answers that would answer. That's the question. What you want, at least we answered what you wanted, but it's more obviously to look into.
True.
Okay. By the way, you should know, Dr. Navid, there's a whole Masechta called Nidah.
Yes.
The whole it's
And mikveh, Rabbi.
There's a Gemara on Nidah, and there's a Mishnayot on mikvos, like Mr. Silverman says, Mishnayot mikvot. There's a lot of this. There's a lot of laws. Good morning. Okay. So we're discussing the following. First of all, not only is it good morning, it's a Chodesh Tov. Today's Rosh Chodesh, today and tomorrow. Should be a beautiful, very great month for everybody.
Oh my.
So the Gemara here brings a Mishnah in the Maseches Idiyos. The Mishnah talks about mats.
Idiot. Isn't that about writings, Rabbi? Idiot is about a Gemara on writings, the writings of the rabbis.
But Idiot was really from the word edut. It was different testimonies that were said regarding certain halachot. That's what you say, Mr. Somebody you're talking about dio. Dio is ink. This is Masechtas Idiot, from the language like 8. Ayin, Dalit, Yud, Vav, Sub.
But what is it about? What is the Gemara Masechta about?
It's about different testimonies, different rabbis testifying regarding.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant. It's writings. It was testimonies of the rabbis. That's what I meant.
Testimonies of the rabbis of different halacha.
Yes.
Different halachot. Okay. Kol hachatzalot mitamint. We said regarding mats. We're back to the mats, everybody, and we're going to become experts in math by the time we could go into the mat business. I think we're opening up a Succah depot. What is that called? Succah place. We're going to be selling schach by the time we're finished. Mr. Haber's you got to go to China. You got to order the stuff for us. We got to make the stuff kosher mats for schach, made for schach. So kol hachatzalot. So we had a Mishnah that says that mats are susceptible to tumat mate. And Rashi explains not only tumat mate, it's susceptible to all types of tumot that can become contaminated, but not the contamination of midras. It's not used, these mats, and we're going to see what type of mats we're referring to. They're not made, these are, obviously it's not soft material mats, because soft material mats you're going to sleep on. And if you're going to sleep on it, then it would be susceptible to that tumah called tumat madras, the tumat midras. So therefore, the Tanakama, the first opinion says these mats are not made for lying down, and therefore they cannot contract the tumah of midras. That means if a nida would go ahead and lie down on it, it's not, or the nida would come in contact with this. It's not normal for these things to be lied down on, and therefore it will not receive the status that the level of contamination of a nida. We said a nida is a source of contamination. And we said if she comes in contact with an item that's designated for sleeping, that item that's designated for sleeping or for sitting would have the same status of the nidah. Like it says, any chair that she sits on, if she comes in contact with that chair could make something, can make a person or can make a utensil contaminated. That's called midras. It gets the status of the source itself. But the Tanakama says that this mat is not something that the nida would sleep on, that a person would sleep on, because it's hard, the material is not so soft, or it's not used for lying down, we'll see, and therefore it will not be subject to this tumah called midras. And therefore, if the nida would come in contact with it, if she would decide to sit on the chair, it's not made for sitting. This mat is not made for sitting, and therefore it will not become contaminated. The level, it will not have the same level of contamination of the nida herself. However, the Chachamim omrim midras. The Chachamim say that it is susceptible to this contamination of midras, and the chair, this mat, would be like the chair of a nida, would be like the bed of the nida, and will become and will have a status of an avatuma. It will have
because you could sit on it, Rabbi, right? The rabbis are saying because you could sit on it. It's a keli.
You could sit on it, but more than the keli, the Chacham are saying that it's used for sitting and lying down, because it's the fact that you're a keli.
So they're saying the Chachamim are disagreeing that even if it's something that you can't sleep on, but the fact that you can sit on it and it's a keli that will receive you, it receives tumah.
Right. So somehow the Chachamim feel that it is used. It's enough used for sitting and sleeping, and therefore it will be subject to the tumah of midras. So the Gemara asked the following question. The Chachamim said midras. It's subject to the tumah of midras. So the Gemara says midrat in ain to may mate low. You're telling me that it could become contaminated the contamination of midras. That means if the nida would sit on it or the nida would lie down on it, it will have the source, the same level tumah. It will also become an av, a daddy of a tumah, that could contaminate a person. But you're telling me it only you're saying midras. Midras seems to indicate that the only way it will become contaminated is through the nida lying down on it, or through the nida sitting on it. But what about if some other source of tumah, some other, let's say a dead animal? Could a dead animal make this item contaminated? The rule is, if something is contaminated, is already susceptible to contamination through the nida. If a nida can make this tameh through lying down, so then any other source also has the ability to make this item contaminated. So why are you saying the words, it has the ability to become tameh through the nida, lying down or sitting on? It should be, it has the ability to become tameh, not only, it's not limited to that. It should be able to become contaminated through other sources as well. Because once something has the ability to become contaminated through the lying down of the nida or the sitting of the nida, it has the ability to become, that item that has the ability to become contaminated could be contaminated through other sources as well. So the Gemara shoots back, and the Gemara supports its question, because we learned in the Mishnah, in Masechtas Nida, Kol HaMitame Midras, anything that's fit to become contaminated through the lying down or the sitting of the nida is mitame made. But also could become tameh through a dead body, not just through a nida or a dead body or other sources of tumah. So why are we saying that this mat is susceptible to tumah, a contamination of a nida or a zav or a zava? It's not it's not only for that it's susceptible to contamination, it's susceptible to all types of contamination. So why limit? How can you just say this contamination, which seems to indicate, if I tell you it could be contaminated through this, what does it sound like? This and not that. And the Gemara's question is, it's not true. An item that's considered a bed of a nida or a bed of a zav could become, and therefore, once it has a status of a lying down item, it could contract contamination through the lying down of the nida. It also could contract contamination through other sources. So why are you so specific and saying midras? So the Gemara answers, Ema af midras. It also midras. The Chachamim are not saying only midras. The only way this bed could become contaminated is through a nida. They're coming to say even through a nida. They're coming to say, of course, there's other it could get contaminated through other sources. But they're saying it not, but it also has the ability to become contaminated. That it has the ability of midras, which is a higher level contamination, because that bed has the ability to contaminate a person or a utensil. It's a little complicated, everybody, because we're not focusing today on these types of tumult, because we don't have the Beit HaMikdash, we don't have Truma, but these are something we have to be familiar with these laws. So when the Beit HaMikdash is back, when Truma is back, if they know what did it become contaminated? Did it not become contaminated? Does this item have the ability to contaminate that item or not? I want to wish everyone a beautiful day. A Chodesh Tov. Looking forward to seeing everybody. Thank you.
Chodesh Tov.
Chodesh Tov. You see, the Gemara deals with all subjects. We're learning Sukkah. Get involved in other subjects.
Getting into some of the things in the last